Bueno, ya para mí pues, es un verdadero honor presentar a nuestro último expositor, el keynote speaker quizás de este evento. Hemos tenido una cantidad de charlas súper interesantes, han abarcado desde todo punto de vista, desde pacientes, punto de vista de oftalmólogos, investigadores básicos, también la parte de administración, la parte de política. O sea, en verdad que para mí ha sido un evento magnífico, gracias a Jacinto y al resto de sus colaboradores. Y bueno, ya pues toca concluir este evento con la exposición del doctor Pete Coffey. Es profesor del UCL en Londres, el Instituto de Oftalmología, y además es codirector ejecutivo de la empresa del Centro de Biología de Células Madre y Ingeniería de Células Madre de la Universidad de California en Santa Bárbara, en Estados Unidos. Él tiene amplia experiencia en tratamiento de terapias celulares para enfermedades degenerativas de la retina, especialmente en degeneración macular. Ha hecho mucho trabajo con células madre, ¿vale? Para producir epitelio pigmentario de la retina, para hacer trasplante, ha hecho ensayos clínicos, ha obtenido resultados satisfactorios en estos ensayos y hoy nos va a hablar sobre las nuevas evidencias en terapia celular aplicadas a una posible cura de la ceguera. Bueno, para mí, como les dije, es un placer. Ok, ya casi todo listo.
¿Puede quitarse?
Sí, ahí. ¿Me quito?
Sí.
Venga.
Okay.
Muy bien. Adelante.
Muy bien. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and apologies, but I will have to give the presentation in English. Even though the UK left the European community, doesn't mean that doctors and scientists should not share our experiences, and hopefully that was one of my reasons for being here today. What I want to do is actually take you through a project very dear to my heart and share it with the community here in Seville and in terms of the public engagement. And that was a project which we started in 2007, which was the London Project to Cure Blindness. So let me take you through what we experienced in what was a cell therapy to clinical trial and for application in age-related macular degeneration. So, the beauty of the eye and what you would have seen all this week was one great thing about the eye is it's got a nice window on the front which no other organ allows to be able to see the back of the eye in exquisite detail in terms of its health and also in disease. But amazingly, you would have heard a term all this week, which is the macula. What is the macula? The macula is just a geographic region at the back of the eye. That's all it is. And it's a region which is essential for our sight. So the health of that geographic region is essential because the outside world is projected into that space in a very specific map. So the health of that region, that macula, means our vision will be safe. If there's any type of encroachment on that area in terms of disease or health, we will notice that deterioration. But there's an area even smaller within that macula called the fovea, which contains the real cells which allow us to see, hopefully for the majority of our lives. And I can see here today there's a number of individuals who clearly have a visual problem. So it's literally just 10% of the back of the eye. A small region of 10 millimeters, but essential for us to be able to view the world. And sadly, in our age population, in people over the age of 65, there's a deterioration in the health in that area, in that macular region. And it's what's called age-related macular degeneration. So that term itself just gives you the two major problems, age and the geographic region. And the fact that it encroaches that macular region means you will notice a loss of vision. If it was outside that region, and there are many diseases which can affect outside that region, you would not be particularly disturbed apart from maybe your night vision. So the health of that macula is essential. But in age-related, over the age of 65, there's a deterioration in the health of that region. And there are two major groups, which are simply defined as wet and dry. And literally, the wet just means there's blood. And there's blood in that region which should not be there. That's the smaller group within that population. It's about 10% of those people that suffer from this degeneration. 20% suffer from what's called the dry form. And I'm going to concentrate on the wet form this afternoon, for reasons which I'll go into during this presentation. But 65, suddenly there's a problem. There is this wet form occurring, which means there's a bleed in the back of the eye. But what does that actually mean? Surprisingly, even with clinicians who could describe in exquisite detail what was happening at the back of the eye, they very often don't realize what that means to a patient. So we had an artist in residence a number of years ago who took photographs of patients and then painted those photographs as the patients saw themselves. And this is an example of a person I knew very, very well, but again, was quite a shock to me when I actually saw that picture which was painted. And there's two obvious components here. One is the lack of detail. And it's because that macular region is our detail to the outside world. The second is it's black and white. And that was not the artist trying to be trendy. It's because you also lose your colour vision. And this impact was quite huge on the clinicians, not the patients. As I said, the clinicians suddenly saw what their patients were seeing. So, what are we trying to do? So that flat picture, that photograph at the back, really doesn't do justice to the structure at the back. There are three layers which are important for the health of that region. The top layer contains all the cells that are sensitive to light. So they're essential for reading, for recognizing your loved ones, for driving, everything. However, underneath that layer is a layer which is essential for the good health. And it's literally a carpet of cells, that's all it is, a single carpet of cells, but it's essential because it gives nutrients to that top layer, to the seeing part of the eye. And it's that layer which deteriorates and dies in age-related macular degeneration. And then at the back, you have a huge blood supply helping and bringing nutrients to that middle layer, because they are the most metabolically active cell in the whole of our bodies. But it's that middle layer I want you to focus your attention. It's that layer that dies in age-related macular degeneration, whether it be the wet form or the dry form. So, even though it's only 10%, it's crucial that in some way we stop the bleeds. And currently, there is a method. It's a drug that is injected and would have been injected, I dare say, in some of the people here, in their back of the eyes, once every month, typically for 3 months, and then continued afterwards. But only 3 out of 10 patients see a visual recovery following those injections. 6 out of 10, it will stabilize, and 1 out of 10, it has no benefit and does not stop the progression of blindness. And in fact, that blindness can occur very quickly in those individuals within a matter of weeks. What I'm going to show you today is what we did in that 1 out of 10 patients in which the drugs were failing. Those patients were going to go blind within 12 weeks. We had to operate on them within a 6-week window. So, why did we even think doing something as in replacing the cells in that middle layer, that carpet which is needed to give nutrition to the seeing part of the eye, would benefit these patients? And it's because of 2 surgical interventions which we did at the beginning of this millennium. And the first one was what's called macular translocation. And basically, what we did was we lifted the top layer, which contains all the light-sensitive cells, and moved it away from that carpet underneath, which had the disease. So we moved it away from where there was disease in the carpet and moved it round and away and put it back on where we believed there was still good bit of carpet. That operation takes 3 hours and involves further surgeries because you've rotated the retina, the seeing part. You have to counter-rotate the eye, so you have to operate on the muscles of the eye and rotate it. But what was important was what happened to that person's vision. Sorry, this is that operation, actually. Let me just start again. So this is where we've gone in, and we've separated the top layer. Sorry, you can't see it that well because of the sun. So lift the top layer and rotate the retina and then put it back down. You don't need to see the operation, I'll just skip it. So what did that mean? Avery came into the clinic at Moorfields Eye Hospital not being able to read the top letter on the eye chart. If those injections had worked, at best, she would have got a 3-line improvement. But she didn't get an improvement with those injections. She was the 1 out of 10. After the operation, she gained over 6 lines of vision. And amazingly, and it was amazing to us, she actually got a driving license back. Okay. Now, if you ever see this lady in London, I would stay on the curb because she only has 1 good eye, so she has no stereopsis. So, I'm not trying to be sexist, I'm just warning you. But amazingly, she got her driving license back. So this gave us confidence that if we could get good RPE back under a person's retina in time, then we could save a person's vision. This is now an approved procedure in the National Health Service in the UK. But the operation is too long. It's 3 hours and it's multiple operations. So, what we want, and we did a second operation to see whether we could do something quicker, which was to take some of that middle carpet layer from the periphery, because as I said, you don't really notice your periphery that much. And can we move it under the macula? And we did. And again, I'm not going to show you, oh, I can see, yeah, it's pretty good. So this is where we're lasering a piece of RPE, that carpet, and moving it under the macula. Okay. And again, this patient could not see the big A on the eye chart. If the anti-angiogenics had worked, a 3-line improvement. However, they didn't. He was one of the 10 again. And in his case, he got just under 6/12 vision, which is enough to get his driving license back, but he never did get his driving license back. So both those operations showed that good RPE could save someone's vision, but both operations are too long for a standard procedure. We wanted a procedure similar to a cataract operation, which is 20 minutes. So what we need then is to already have a patch of RPE to which we can then transplant into a patient, not lasering out RPE or moving the retina. We just want a patch of RPE. That was our starting goal in 2007. Naively, we believed we could do that within 5 years. We failed. It took us 8 years. But what I'm going to show you now is what happened. So, what we're attempting is to replace that middle carpet. It's got a long name. It's called the retinal pigment epithelium. You don't even need to remember that. It's just that middle layer. And we need to replace it. And it's in these patients, the 1 out of 10, which failed. They're called severe submacular bleeds. We were not going for what is end stage. And in end stage, it's not just the middle layer, that carpet that's affected. It's the top layer, so the layer that contains the light-sensitive cells. And it's also the blood supply at the back that are affected as well. There is no way just putting that middle layer back would help these people. Even though there are reports which have come out of the US saying they put the middle layer back in these patients and they get visual restoration. Pardon from what I'm about to say, but that's bull. That's not going to happen. Okay, so what in the one patient group we were looking for, what could we do? So on the left, you see that carpet of cells from, sadly, it's a 17-year-old eye from an accident. And on the right, it's what we can make in a dish with stem cells. And you'll see there are 2 patterns to the stem cells. One is the color, they're black, okay? That's the reflection of your pupil. The black pupil is a reflection of those cells at your back of your eye. The other thing is, you have a crazy pavementing, I don't know whether you use that term in Spain, crazy pavementing stone shape, okay? So they're black, and that's what we could produce in the lab in 2007. We could make the eye cells that we wanted. So, what we want to do is put it onto an underlay so that we've got a carpet of those cells. So we created a patch. The patch is literally 3 by 6 millimeters. Very, very small, but it would allow a patient, if it were to work, not only to read the eye chart, but to read, which is much more complex. You need more of a visual field to read. So we also had to make our own tool. And to this day, this tool costs more than a Porsche. Now, I know I'm working in ophthalmology and blindness, but I think I'd rather have a Porsche than this tool. But anyway, this is what we do. We load the patch, that carpet of cells, into this injector. And the reason we need this is it needs to be protected as we insert it into the eye. And then it just injects the carpet of cells out into and between the top and middle layer, which I'll show you in a second. So this is the operation. So at the back of your eye, you have a sac of fluid. We need to remove the fluid so that we can detach the top layer from the middle. We then make what's called a bleb. You inject the fluid to separate the two layers. I think you'll see that in a second. Yeah, so there's the bleb. So it's the opposite of a retinal detachment. We are detaching the retina. We make a small incision and then we post that patch, that carpet of cells, in between the top and the middle layer, on top of the bad RPE. So in cartoon, this is what happens. We form the bleb, the detachment, we make an incision, and we post the patch, and then we can use gas in air or oil to push it back. And that's the operation done. Okay? Amazingly, that operation takes 45 minutes. So it now is an outpatient procedure. Okay? The other amazing thing is 70% of the patients have that operation awake. Okay, so it truly is an outpatient procedure. So, 2015, August 11th, we operated on the first patient. And this is just the little holder that we use to carry that patch from where we make the patch to the surgery. So we make the patch at the Institute of Ophthalmology, and we have to take it to the surgery in Moorfields Eye Hospital. We have to go out the front door, round the corner, and in through accident and emergency. The regulators in the UK have given us 8 hours to walk that distance, which is literally 10 minutes. But fortunately, here on the corner is a tapas bar, so we can just have a rest before we go to surgery. No, we don't. So, on the left are the folks who made the patch and then delivered it to the surgical team for them to implant. So, to cut to the quick, did it work? So, in clinical trials, the chart you use is very different from what you go to the optometrist. So we have 5 letters on each line. So when we're talking about sight in clinical trials, we either talk about lines of vision or numbers of letters. So we were hoping that we were going to get as good as if the injections, which they were given but failed, had worked, which was a 3-line improvement. We were hoping in these patients after the surgery to get a 3-line improvement. We would never expect to go back to 20/20 vision. Okay? We never thought that would happen. The first patient could just about read 2 lines on the eye chart. At best, we were hoping, given the injections, if they work, you get 3 lines, we may get a 3-line improvement. We actually got a 6-line improvement in that first patient, which was quite astounding. But we didn't just want single letters. What about reading? So pre-transplantation, and apologies, I just recently gave this talk in America, the patient could just about read 1.5 words a minute. Post-transplantation, she was reading nearly 80 words a minute. Okay. The second patient, Douglas, could only just read 1 line, nearly 1 line. So hopefully we were going to get a 3-line improvement. We got a 5-line improvement. Douglas, pre-transplantation, couldn't even see the book. Post-transplantation, was reading 50 words a minute. Celebration. Whoa! I wish that had happened when we actually got the results coming out. Okay. So, at the 1 year, the green line indicates the reading of the eye chart. We were above our expectation. And amazingly, on the reading, there were 79 words in the first patient. In the second patient, again, above our expectation and reading 50 words a minute. But what's it looking like now? We're in 1983. So 2 years, that was in both patients. What about 4 years? The first patient started to deteriorate at 3 years after the transplant. Is that because we saw the cells being rejected? The answer is no. We could still see the cells. That wasn't a good one. But what we could see was that there was some damage on the patch. The second patient, Douglas, has maintained that vision above the line, and we're now 8 years from when we did his operation. And I can tell you, he came in recently, and he's still above the green line. So, this is probably more so for any of the medics here. So what evidence is it that they're actually using their vision truly, and it's because of what we transplanted the RPE? Well, we've used many different methods to try and correlate the vision with what we see with the cells. We can see photoreceptors, we can see there's phagocytosis has started to occur again because we're getting autofluorescence, and microperimetry, where you shine a small light. I think there's a problem with the translation. You got? Is it? No, it's okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll wait a second. Okay. So we can shine small lights just on the patch and ask the patient whether they can see those small speckles of light. It's called microperimetry. And this is the second patient. So this X marks where he's viewing the outside world. And he's viewing the outside world right over the patch we implanted in that patient. This just gives you, this is a different group now that we've started to treat. But again, this is much more for the clinicians who may be here. In the top is a picture post-transplantation showing you a disorganized retina, fluid, etc. The bottom one is post-transplantation, and even though we're actually making the therapy, we're surprised how that structure of that retina has been reconstructed. It's quite amazing. Okay, so there are correlates as to why we should be seeing some recovery of vision. But obviously, the better way is to actually let someone tell you.
Before his pioneering stem cell treatment, Douglas Waters was completely blind in his right eye. Now he can see.
Everyone wanted to go outside when the rain finally stopped.
That's perfect. So this is an amazing improvement, Mr. Waters.
I just couldn't believe it. And each morning I pick things out in the bedroom to look out in the garden. I do this, and it's unbelievable. I'm really chuffed, I suppose you could say.
Now it'd be good for the fireworks. So his wife was very chuffed because he could now sort out the colours of his socks, which, you know, hey ho, there you go. So Douglas, that was the second patient, and he's still at the level he was 6 months after we did the transplant. So he's still above the 3 lines, and he's still reading, and he was the patient who couldn't even see the book. So, what about the rest, though? What about the end stage? Could we possibly even consider reconstructing a dead retina, a top layer, and maybe a vascular? The only way we're going to do that is if we have the cells to make those particular layers. And the good news is we can. So we've started to make the blood supply. So again, this green is probably the one to go to. This is basically a blood supply. So we can make that out of stem cells now. And we can add that to the RPE. Okay, can we make photoreceptors? You already heard this morning, and we've been working on this for a long time. We can make retinas in a dish. Okay, and in fact, we've now able to make it at scale, which is the important thing. So we can make these small retinas, and we can actually get the very light sensitive cells we need out of them. The big problem, as you heard this morning, is how long it takes you to do that. It takes anything up to 180 days. Well, we may have actually got it down to 70 days. Okay, so we're improving those things. But the big problem is putting the patch in. I won't say easy, but I am going to say it's easy compared to putting photoreceptors or trying to actually put cells to form a blood vessel. So, a sideline has been to make a robot to do it for us, because the precision needed is much more than can be done with a surgeon doing it with their own hand. So what we've developed is a robot to do that for us. So I'm just going to show you the robot. So I hope you can see it. It's on the top right there coming down. And this is the robot doing this surgery. This isn't a surgeon. So it's going to target the vessel. So the nice thing with this, I mean, if there's any VR surgeons, is it's concentric tubes. So literally, unlike a fixed tool, this can move in any dimension, which makes it plausible in terms of being able to approach at any direction. And it uses, OCT, etc., to actually target it. I think that's it, actually. Yeah. So we now really do have the possibility of reconstructing the whole macula. We've shown that cellular replacement, as long as you reconstruct the architecture, as in you put a carpet back with a new carpet, does actually have a possibility of restoring someone's vision. So just to show you that we're a diverse group, all the engineers are male and all the biologists are women. So thank you very much.
Bueno, pues creo que todos nos hemos quedado boca abiertos, muertos, con todo lo que nos ha mostrado el profesor Pete Coffey, ¿vale? Unos grandes avances. Creo que los oftalmólogos también tienen que empezar a tener un poquito de miedo con ese robot, ¿vale? Pero bueno, muy bien, excelente charla. Y bueno, estamos... ¿Preguntas, dudas, comentarios?
Una pregunta, ¿cuándo cree usted que esa técnica se le puede aplicar a la seca?
So we just finished a clinical trial this June in which we started to treat dry patients. It was early stage dry, but it was dry patients. One thing I didn't mention, which actually now would be appropriate, often when new advanced therapies are presented in the media, they add that it will cost £1 million to get that therapy. As in recently, there's been an approved therapy for sickle cell, which is the new gene editing. And it's going to cost £1 million. £1 million. The NHS can't afford that. What I want to say here is to make those patches costs, and the surgery, cost €4,000. We can make 25,000 of those patches within 4 months. So this is an affordable therapy which not only is cheap, but would save a healthcare system in Spain, France, Italy, the UK, a significant amount of money. It costs €15,000 socioeconomically per person, per blind person per year. So that means you're saving literally €10,000 per patient per year. If you times that by 25,000, which is only 5% of the clinical population in the UK, that's a saving of nearly over £250 million a year. So these, while they're advanced therapies, are ones which can save not just sight, but save monies for our health systems. So, sorry, I just wanted to add that. But we just started treating the patients with dry, and we finished a clinical trial. The readout won't be until next year.
Muy bien. Vamos a esperar que termine el traductor. ¿Otra pregunta?
Muchas gracias.
Una pregunta técnica sobre la cirugía. Tras la introducción del parche, que tiene aproximadamente 3 milímetros, ha dicho 3 por 6, algún tipo de láser sobre la zona de la incisión, y necesita después, además, tratamiento con gas, intercambio con gas, aire, nada.
Great question. So in those initial patients, we used oil, not gas and oil, but the whole idea is to use gas and oil. The reason we didn't do it was obviously it was, you know, a brand new trial. You will need to laser where you're making the incision in the retinopathy. But we are still developing the patch and the tool, so the second versions are going to be both smaller and easier to introduce into that subretinal space. So we're trying to make the whole thing a lot more easier in terms of its operation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Jacinto.
Sí, profesor Peter Coffey, estoy aquí.
Oh, sorry.
Primero, muchísimas gracias por haber aceptado la invitación y venir a explicarnos personalmente estos avances que para nosotros son una ventana de esperanza enorme. Quisiera hacer una primera pregunta. ¿Qué problemas tecnológicos hay en estos momentos para que esta terapia avanzada pueda aplicarse no a nivel de unos pocos ensayos clínicos, sino ya como un tratamiento para miles de personas? ¿Cuáles serían en estos momentos las limitaciones tecnológicas? Y segunda cuestión, desde un punto de vista de relación con la administración, ¿cuál es la experiencia que han tenido ustedes?
So I think one of the major problems is this is a new therapy and it's manufactured in a very specific way. So those manufacturing facilities need to be set up, not necessarily locally, but definitely, you know, in individual countries. We are looking at how far we can actually take our therapies across the world, as in making it in the UK, but delivering it to Spain. So the manufacturing is an issue. In terms, equally, the stem cell we're using at the moment is an embryonic-derived stem cell, which ethically I feel okay with because it's a donated blastocyst from IV clinics. I still see it as almost like an organ donation. Some countries, Italy, Germany, may have issues with that. But there are other types of stem cells that you can use. There's the induced pluripotent, but they would have to be tested separately. In terms of health systems, their major concern is if we, as we can make 25,000 patches, the actual making of the therapy no longer is an issue. It's delivering that to a patient. So you heard earlier today the complications that are arising in the number of anti-VEGF injections that are given. But in the UK, we've set up clinics, you know, injection clinics to do that. If this truly is as good as we hope it will be, then similar clinics would need to be set up to enable the VR surgeons or trained specialists specifically for this type of operation. So there is a lot of training for those health services which they may need to consider.
¿Alguna otra por allá?
Sí, profesor. A mí me gustaría saber, entiendo que si este tipo de parche puede funcionar en la DMAE, haciendo un parche es pregunta. O sea, bueno, antes de eso, ¿tienen experiencia ustedes en retinitis pigmentosa? Porque entiendo que quizás haciendo un parche semicircular o más periférico se podría solucionar la ampliación del campo. Es una pregunta. No, ojalá diga que sí.
So, yes and no. So I'll go for the no bit first. There are diseases, monogenic diseases, which affect the RPE, to which, yes, this patch might be amenable to. But in RD, where it's the photoreceptors, then no, putting RPE back will not help those individuals. However, as you saw and you heard earlier on, there is a global effort. It's not just London. There's a global effort to look at restoring those light-sensitive cells, which are the photoreceptors. So the current patch, which is the RPE, no. In terms of the future and a patch of photoreceptors, yes.
Muchísimas gracias.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Bueno, quería preguntar si este tipo de este sistema para DMAE húmeda, ya cualquier persona que vaya allí podría realizarlo pagando el pago, o sea, realizando el pago y cumpliendo los requisitos, claro.
No, not at the moment. We're working within what is the clinical trial system in the UK. And as you heard earlier, those pathways are tortuous. So we are going to the next stage, which is the pivotal stage, which then would allow it to be used in the UK. But it wouldn't only be used and wouldn't be specific to private, it's to actually get it into the social healthcare system in the UK. But there is another stage in the UK. It's an organisation called NICE, which is a strange name because it stands for the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, and that determines whether a therapy can be used within the NHS. So that's what we're striving to achieve. We believe we will get to a point where we can approach NICE by the end of 2025.
Gracias por su exposición, enhorabuena por su trabajo. Como ve, creo que gran parte de la audiencia lo que le interesa es saber un poco cuándo estarán estas terapias disponibles y de qué manera podría ser. Aunque ha comentado un poco hasta qué punto podrían ir extendiéndose en distintos países, no sé si al final es cuestión de que laboratorios, que aquí generalmente serían instituciones, pudieran desarrollarlas, o puede que aparezcan casas comerciales que trabajen con esa tecnología, o puede que sea una fórmula mixta, igual que ha ocurrido con las terapias CAR-T, que existen propias de los centros hospitalarios y otras que desarrollan las casas comerciales.
So we're working with both big pharma and biotech. We do have a spin-out now, biotech company. So we're working with both, again, for that reason, which is we ourselves as academics and clinicians within the UK and within the NHS and the academic system can't actually, make this into a global therapeutic. So we are working with big pharma and, as I say, spin out some biotech to as far as we can, try and accelerate it.
¿Alguien más? Oh. Álvaro.
Gracias, Pete, por una presentación maravillosa. Quería preguntarte, porque me ha parecido intrigante los resultados que mostrabas, que a lo largo del tiempo la efectividad perdía un poco, o sea, el trasplante perdía un poco de efectividad. Quería preguntarte, ¿crees que eso se puede deber a un fallo en la integración del parche en sí? ¿Las células terminan degenerando o es un tema de rechazo inmune? Esa sería mi primera pregunta. Y mi segunda es, ¿estos pacientes necesitan estar en un régimen de inmunosupresión continua o cómo se les mantiene el parche a lo largo del tiempo? Gracias.
So I'll answer that last bit first. So we preload the patients with steroids before the operation and then taper it down, so it's prednisolone. The vitreous is taken out by using tropicamide, and then a depot of tropicamide is put in, which can last up until about 3 months. We go in between 8 and 12 weeks post-transplantation to remove the oil, and at that time we put a capsule of steroid in. In the first patient, that capsule lasted 2 years, but again, it's steroids. In the third patient and subsequent patients we've done, the capsules last longer, they last 3 years. So is it the case that we believe in that first patient where we saw the deterioration, do we actually think it's immune rejection? And the answer is no, we can still see the cells. So if it was an immune rejection, I would have thought you'd actually see all the cells go, not just a little bit. And we see a band where they've definitely gone, but there was surgical damage at that point. But we can see the rest of the cells. The sad thing is, in that first patient, that little band was right over where she initially was actually viewing the world. So she's not shifted over to the other bit. Do we need long-term immunosuppression? No. From the second patient, we can still see the cells. He's still fixated over the center of the patch. So the capsules for us are great because we don't have to put the patients on, severe triple immunosuppression. So, and the capsule we could, if we thought you did need continuing immunosuppression, go in and put another capsule. But we've not done that in any of the patients we've done. I hope that covers it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? ¿No? ¿No? Bueno, yo tengo una sola porque ya creo que has contestado todas. Es sobre la matriz, sobre la membrana, ¿vale? ¿Qué tipo de material puede ser mejor? ¿Materiales biodegradables? ¿Materiales no degradables?
We decided not to use a biodegradable material for 2 reasons. One is we believe the membrane which is there in the patient, in the person, is an aged membrane, and we know from past work that membrane itself isn't conducive for cells in an aged eye to sit down on. The second reason is, as soon as you start using a biodegradable membrane, then the actual product, which is the cells and the membrane, is breaking down. So the length of time you can actually keep it before you give it a patient is very short, whereas the patches we produce at the moment, we can keep for 6 months in an incubator. So equally, the regulatory path of a biodegradable membrane is huge. But there is a clinical trial in the US where they're using RPE on a biodegradable membrane. They treated 1 patient last year. I think they may have treated a second patient this year. So that was done at the National Eye Institute in Bethesda in the US.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, si no hay más preguntas, agradecer nuevamente a Pete por su excelente charla, que ha traído esperanza para todos.